With the Boland case continuing to work its way through the court system in 2025, what does the handgun roster look like from the outside perspective looking in? We've got Shadow Systems, a company out of Texas, sitting down with us today. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, it is time to get the outside of California perspective of what it's like getting a firearm newly onto the California roster and into the California market. To talk us through that today, we have brought on the CEO of Shadow Systems, a firearms manufacturer from Texas. That of course is Trevor Rowe. Trevor, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. So much of what we've accomplished recently was because of y'all's efforts, so thank you.
Absolutely. And guys, before we jump into this today, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps with the algorithms to get this information as far and wide as it possibly can. At the end of the day, what we're looking to do is educate on Second Amendment litigative, legislative, and cultural efforts here in the state of California. So Trevor, if you can help me out here, Shadow Systems is a relatively new company.
Sure. Yeah.
Out of Texas. I think 2016 is it?
2016, yeah. We really started in 17. That's when we got serious. That's right.
Okay, so what is the origin story there? What's the drive to manufacture firearms, and what's the story there as far as bringing you from 2017 to today?
Of course. Well, I guess the first thing that's interesting about Shadow Systems is it was formed by people who were really end users first. The reality is that we didn't have any gun industry experience. Nobody from industry came in for probably the first 2 years of the business. We were competitive shooters, we were maybe members of law enforcement, former military, whatever, but we were just like gun guys and girls. I mean, we were into guns, And so the goal, the original vision was maybe a simple one, but it was essentially, we wanted to just build a gun that included all the features that we as tinkerers and builders and enthusiasts loved. And it has always been a mystery to me why there's such a huge aftermarket for so many brands. And it's obvious. It's because a lot of brands weren't incorporating the things that the hardcore shooters really wanted in the box. So back in 2017, we started out as a parts company. Okay, we were machining parts. The story of Shadow has always been one of trying to learn to do it ourselves and to do our own manufacturing. So from the very beginning, we were, learning manufacturing. And in 2018, we said, we actually think we can build a production gun. We know enough about it now. We realize it's actually feasible to go take on these brands that have been doing it for 200 years. And so we designed our first pistol, the XR920 in 2018. It launched in 2019. And the vision then is the same as now. It's you open the box and you're like, oh, I don't have to do anything to it. I don't need to put a different trigger or barrel or whatever. And real shooters designed this. And so that's how it started. That was the vision. And we've just been kind of repeating that process as we've added compensated guns and larger models and subcompact. It's like, what would I want as a shooter? Now, in parallel, we were learning to be experts in manufacturing, and so we've built out a huge facility in Plano, Texas, near Dallas. We have brought in all kinds of technologies, and we've actually gotten really good as manufacturers now, but we were just all shooters first. So
that's actually kind of interesting if you're coming from the approach of a tinkerer, wanting to get into the firearms manufacturing side of it. Something that you might not be thinking about in Texas are the regulations that you would have to abide by in a state like California.
100%.
So I'm just sort of curious, I guess on the manufacturing side, what challenges does that pose when you're trying to make the best firearm possible, but then also realize if I'm going to be in a market in the California market, I have to abide by these regulations, and then what pushes you to then actually get on the California roster?
Sure. Okay, so that's actually, I'm going to unpack that for a second. When we originally designed our pistols, what informed our decisions was the experiences that we'd had as shooters and competitors and whatever. That didn't necessarily cover all the bases that we needed to cover. So as an example, it's a simple example, but when we started to move into law enforcement, which is a big success story for the brand, we had to make some changes to the design to pass some of these holster grab tests, right? So we had to make changes to our design to make sure that we could, service the law enforcement community well in level 2 and 3 retention holsters. Modest changes, right? We had to think about what plastics we were using more when we went into cold weather testing with military units. So there were many things along the way where we kind of had to like back up a few steps and say, oh, we need to tweak the product for this reason or that reason. The California market was a whole different ballgame. And so I'm from California. So I was raised in the Pasadena area in San Marino. It's where I'm from. My family's still in California. And so that was always I was like in the crucible of competitive shooting in the 90s in California, right? I shot with Taryn Butler like every weekend when I was 15 years old. And so I knew the California gun culture was strong and had been a part of it. But it seemed impossible because of the microstamping thing, which was like, obviously an impossibility. And so because of what you guys did, all of a sudden that door opened again, which was totally unexpected for us. But of course it meant that we had to look at the product and say, what is it going to take to pass these other tests that still remain? And I mean, I can go into the technical side of it at some point too, but it really was the changes that your team and others were able to effect in California were the only things that made it possible to be there.
Well, and it's great to get the decision that we got that is essentially removed microstamping.
Right.
We're still pushing on the other two main issues and the roster as a whole, as it's still in the Ninth Circuit, kind of sitting behind the Duncan. We're kind of awaiting a decision on Duncan there, but definitely a lot of optimism there, and hopefully you don't have those regulations in the future or a roster at all that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of curious. So this is the first year that you're going to be able to get firearms into the California market. So what are you bringing to California? And I'm also curious, what is California still missing out on because of the legislative issues that we have here? That is the handgun roster.
Sure. I brought a couple guns to show, so we can look at those really quickly. So there's 3 guns. Well, I should say there's 3 model types on the California roster right now. This is called an XR920. Okay, you can think of it as a compact top end on a full-length grip, 17+1 for a no band state, 10+1 for California. So this is a larger frame for somebody who has maybe larger hands. We do have Glock magazine compatibility with the models that are going into California, just so you're aware. And this one would be kind of one of our best sellers, right? We're doing this in California on the roster as the bronze barrel gun, as a black barrel version of this same gun, and then also in a flat dark earth gun. So all 3 of those, in fact, the flat dark earth guns I think were added to the roster this week, so we should see those soon. But California will be getting XR920 pistols, again, full-size grip. They'll be getting MR920 pistols, which is this same gun but with a compact length frame, okay? So that would be in a no-band state, normally a 15+1. Again, 10+1 in California, 9mm, but top ends are the same, compact top end, okay? Flat dark earth, black barrel. And then the probably most interesting one being added would be the DR920p. So the DR920p is a full-size pistol, but it has our integrated compensator with the front sight actually on the comp. So it's kind of like a sight tracker where the comp is going to remain in place, so the front sight is not reciprocating as you shoot. So if you're an iron sight shooter, that can be a nice advantage. It will be, at least to my knowledge, the only truly compensated pistol with a true ported compensator on the roster, made possible by our patented attachment method, which even by California's rather broad standards for what a thread is, this is not a threaded barrel. So it can be sold in California. Again, it's a full-size frame, compensated gun, and we're doing this one in black barrel and bronze.
So seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
And definitely gonna be a treat. And guys, if you're kind of out there in 2025 and you're maybe looking at your next toy, just know, there is new stuff coming onto this market, which is obviously great to see. But I'm also curious, distributing to the rest of the nation, what kind of technology, and I guess here's the basis of the question and kind of the reason that I want to ask you. It seems a little bit counterintuitive when you have something like the Handgun Safety Act or whatever it's called. it's supposed to be about safety, or at least that's the way it's written.
Correct.
But essentially what they've done is prohibited new technology from coming into the state, and that newer technology generally errs on the side of safety. So, I mean, can you speak at all to the technology that's out there, that's offered to people all across the country that California doesn't have access to, that would be an upgrade to some of the firearms we have here?
Yeah. I mean, you can even make an argument to some extent that what's deemed to be a safety improvement in the form of a trigger disconnect in its own way can create a safety issue, in the sense that, you know, the final step in clearing a firearm before you clean it, as an example, is to dry fire it, right? And one of the things that we found is, like, we always forget you have to put the magazine in to dry fire the gun, and so it just kind of complicates that process a little bit, and potentially you have a round in the chamber when you. I kind of think that the magazine in dry fire thing is a little bit uncomfortable for other reasons. So I think the definition of safety is obviously a little bit fungible, a little bit broad, a little bit questionable in some ways. But even going to the core of your question, like what other technologies are not in California? Well, I mean, first, I'll just say this. I mean, the obvious one that California is missing out on is magazines, right? And so, I mean, that to me is a very dubious ban. Okay, we saw the 1994 assault weapons ban go away, all right? And it doesn't seem like the world became less safe because of it. That was a 10-round magazine ban. So all of those 10-round magazine bans, I think, are somewhat problematic. There's new technologies and materials, right, that are on new pistols. And because the barrier to entry is high to get into California, for a small business that is potentially innovating on the cutting edge and developing new interesting things, they're going to maybe be later to the California market.
Right.
You know, they're going to struggle to go through what we did. We had to design a patent, that's patent pending right now, but a very unique trigger system to convert the pistols over. Okay, and in fact, that trigger system would convert any Glock handgun if you wanted to put it in a Glock. So it's a very powerful design, but I mean, that's real engineering prowess and hours and time and prototyping and machining. I mean, it's months and months, not to mention the challenge of stocking additional SKUs and all those things. So for new brands or new companies that have cutting edge stuff, with the California barriers being what they are, California is not going to get that stuff later or at all.
Well, I guess that puts just more and more importance on lawsuits like the Boland lawsuit, which, you know, like I said already, we are still pushing on this. The micro-stamping is not enough, and there's going to be more legislation on micro-stamping coming up. So that law or that lawsuit becomes more important than ever, so that we can start getting that stuff, and taking away the handgun roster would certainly be good for a lot of Californians. I guess final thoughts, you know, we just saw a change in our political administration in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is now in office. He's got an entire administration that he's ushering in. The makeup of Congress is a little bit different. What's your view on the Second Amendment community across the nation, being kind of right in the middle of it there in Plano, Texas, and how do you see that shaping up 2025?
So I truly believe that we are likely entering a golden age. I think the real question is how much can get done in 4 years. That's the only thing we've got that's a limit right now is the time, I think. I suspect if you look at gun sales, because I pay a lot of attention to what the market's doing, I think one of the biggest impediments to gun sales, you know, it has actually been the value of money. And some of the programs that existed before and some of the monetary practices that existed before, I think took us to a place where you put 3 things in the grocery cart and it's $100.
Yeah.
And that really impacts the funds available for someone to pursue an interest in shooting or even buy a gun to defend themselves. So I think what's going to help potentially most for the gun industry in the whole is I suspect that the economic improvements that we're going to see are going to make the money in people's pockets more valuable, which is really important. I also think that if I look at some of the things that we've experienced from big tech, the best example is shadow banning, and I'm sure you've experienced that too.
Yep.
I mean, there is this really insidious method that's used by some of these social media channels whereby they make your channel suddenly invisible to your audience. And we've had countless examples of our audience saying, hey, I know that I followed you guys and now I'm not following you anymore. And we're like, well, yeah. So that stuff has happened a lot. And I'm hopeful that there's going to be more pressure to, free up speech within the social media world for manufacturers and gun manufacturers. I also think too, the capital markets, debt has been very difficult to source for gun companies. There's been 1,000 things like that where it's just been this kind of woke thinking and anti-gun thinking that's permeating some of the channels and areas of support for industry. So I think a lot of that's going to change too relatively quickly. So I'm really hopeful, but I'll just close by saying that we as an industry and we as a shooting community, we get excited about the next product and the next gun and this caliber, whatever. And I mean, what we really should be really most excited about is the work that you guys are doing and other organizations like you, because I mean, we can get as excited as we want, but if our rights are taken away, then none of that matters. And so I guess from the bottom of my heart, and especially as a Californian, thank you for what you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Well, heck yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, it's symbiotic, right? So we're definitely going to be looking to make gains as far as the litigation and legislation is concerned in 2025 to continue this cultural movement towards recouping our Second Amendment rights that have been lost in California, and then also solidifying the defense for those things. But this certainly doesn't help being able to see the new products in California.
Yeah, we're so excited about it. We really are.
And so are we. And Trevor, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you letting us know what the perspective is from the outside looking in, even as a native California. Probably gave you a little bit of an edge for California, as compared to some others. But I appreciate the time, and thanks for sitting down with us.
Of course, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like videos like this, you want to continue seeing them, once again, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps with the algorithms to push this message out as far and wide as possible. Once again, we are looking to educate on the litigative, legislative, and cultural efforts here in the state of California. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.